welcome to the Good Pod. Today, we'll be talking about Season 2, Episode 1 of Elsbeth. She's back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, as always, the one and only Marissa Garza. Marissa, you good?
Good. I'm great. I wore pink today for Elsbeth. I was like, I have to show up with some vibrant colors. I did not bring any excuse.
Sorry.
This is a podcast.
Sorry.
This is a
Hey,
podcast, Jason.
hey.
It's a podcast.
No, I'm not doing
There
anything.
are no phones in
I'm not doing
podcasting.
anything important. What's up?
Oh, you are
Huh?
not. Go leave.
Hey, listen,
Go. If you go before the break,
I'm doing some sort of thing. I guess
there is no
I'll get back to you. All right. Sorry, Marissa. Sorry.
some sort of thing. I can't. First of all, in all the years we've been podcasting together, you have never done this to me.
You know, sometimes phones just come up. Phone calls come. And you just gotta take them when you gotta take them.
Okay, Mr.
Listen,
Important Businessman.
Don't murder me with a retractable knife. Whatever that thing was. Listen, we back.
We're back, and we're back at the opera.
Yeah.
Like we as podcasters cannot escape the opera.
No.
We often end up podcasting about New York and the opera based on whatever show we are podcasting about.
Past and present.
Old hat.
Yeah.
Old hat for us.
We were there when the opera started in the Gilded Age. We're here now in Elsbeth. Yeah. Listen, we back.
Yeah.
We back. What did you overall impressions of the return of our girl Elsbeth?
Well, it was great to see her and the crew back on the TV, of course. They literally it just is the show all over again. They make like some mentions to last season, which I thought were funny. Like there was this one point where they were like, we got in the groove. And then there was a long break.
Well,
and that was really weird.
There were quite a few.
So
there were quite a few callbacks.
I liked the callbacks that happened, which makes me like encouraged for the rest of the season in terms of like who we're gonna see from Elsbeth. But maybe our dreams will come true, Jason. Maybe some good wife interaction.
We'll talk about something that happened at the end of the episode and talk about a possible opening of the door to the good wife. But yeah, it just felt it felt really more of what we enjoyed from last season, more of Elsbeth, more of the interaction between Elsbeth and Kaya and all of Elsbeth's antics with the suspects of the crime and how she is going about solving the case. So it felt warm, it felt welcoming, it felt like we've been here before. Now listen, we had how many episodes of Elsbeth did we have last season? I think it was 8 to 10.
It was
right?
just 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this season is like 20 episodes, so we have a supersized order of Elsbeth this season. I guess the network saw the success of Elsbeth and said, let's supersize it. Let's get a whole 20 episodes. So we will be with you for every episode. Last season we did 2 episodes per podcast. We'll be with you every week, breaking down every episode of Elsbeth as it goes. So listen, we'll be here with you 20 episodes. Now, let's not forget our one and true love, the good wife, right? If you're just
where it all began.
Yeah, if you're just finding us because of the Elsbeth coverage, we want to remind you and let you know that we do good wife coverage. We've started our rewatch of the Good Wife. We are in the beginning stages of, well, actually we're finishing up season 1 right now and getting ready to go into season 2. So if you unlike Elsbeth, we didn't take a break from season 1 to season 2. We've still been going with Good Wife. As soon as we finished our Elsbeth season 1 coverage, we went into the Good Wife. We're working our way through season 1. We're almost done. We're almost finished season 1. So if you came here because you found our podcast looking for Elsbeth coverage, we got you on that front. We also have Good Wife coverage for you. So come and join. We have a lot of fun talking about the Good Wife, a lot of fun breaking down the 2009 and 10 of it all, talking about the things that have changed and haven't changed. So come and join the ride on our other podcasts of the week, The Good Wife. We will have Good Wife and Elsbeth coverage. We have 2 podcasts a week, 1 Good Wife, 1 Elsbeth. Come join the ride.
Yes, like there's a lot of talk about the Marvel universe, like the MCU and everything. We're all about the GWU, or the Good Wife universe,
the Kingverse,
Kingverse. Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
it's really fun to kind of watch this whole like universe unfold by doing our Good Wife rewatch and also kind of watching where it is now with Elsbeth. So I hope you join us over at Good Wife podcasts drop on Mondays. So you can always catch those there in the same feed. We're not that complicated.
Yeah.
Same place.
And if you found us and you end up enjoying our coverage, you want to help us out, there are a couple of free and easy ways to help us out. Any podcast platform you're listening to us on has some sort of rating system. You can rate us 5 stars. You can leave us a review depending on what platform you're working on or listening from. We would really, really appreciate it. It really helps our podcast grow and get into the eyes of more people. If you want to leave us a comment, a question, feedback, we also have an email address. We are at thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com. We got a lovely, lovely, lovely message from Dana Olson this past week, just letting us know that she's really enjoying the coverage and really enjoying what we have to say about The Good Wife and all the good shenanigans. Dana, we love you so much. Thank you so much for the lovely
Thank
message.
you.
If you want to hit us up, that's where you hit us up at thegoodpodfeedback@gmail.com. Listen, we got a lot of housekeeping out of the way. Do you want to just jump
Yeah.
into this thing? You want to jump into the case, into
Would you like
the
to go to
goings
the
on?
opera?
You want to go to the opera? And
To the opera.
listen, if I had to sit for 4 hours and hear about the opera, I might make murder as well. I might kill someone. I don't know. But let's get into it.
All right, the case of the week. We see a friend of the television, friend of the stage, friend of the film and movie screens, Nathan Lane. Nathan Lane is our suspect of the week. He is an opera goer and he is like really annoyed by the new people sitting in front of him. He's at the opera, we get a new person coming in, he's got a date, everything. But then as Jason showed us at the beginning of the podcast today, there's just, some annoying things about this guy.
Mhm.
But Nathan Lane is like a diehard opera person, and we don't really know his character's name for like
It's
a
got to be
lot of this episode,
at
but
least
his name is Philip.
at least halfway in. We still don't know the man's name. Like, oh, okay, it's Philip Cross. And listen, Philip seems like the kind of guy who would really bristle if you called him Phil. Like you're like, hey Phil, what's up? He's like,
Yes.
my
Oh, yes.
name is Philip, thank you, and I will have you address me as such. So he's really that kind of type A, you know, better than everyone else type of guy who really kind of rubs everyone the wrong way.
Yeah, he comes in, he's got his little hat next to him for his wife, Evelyn, who, we'll talk about later on, but, saving a seat for Evelyn who passed away. He's usually a very happy camper in his seats because Abby, the person who usually sits there, is very lovely and very short and very old, and so doesn't do a lot of talking. But this guy, Eddie,
Eddie, yep, Eddie.
Eddie. Yeah, Eddie. Eddie comes in. He's like, "This is my way to get to know women. Like this is the move. We're gonna go on dates to the opera, and we're going
We're gonna act
to
like complete asses when we're at the opera.
yeah."
Yeah.
And like we're at the movies. We got popcorn. We got
Mhm.
snacks. We've got phones ringing. All this other stuff. And this is super annoying to Philip. And so he goes home. He's so upset. He goes home, and then he's looking around his house, which was more like a church room, which was more like,
I would say it had a very
yes,
museum vibe, had exhibits and had different things going on around the
yes,
place. Yeah.
yeah. I do think that room, which I might cut this out, I don't know, but I do think that room was used in the Gilded Age. I think it's like where the women's group meets with Clara Barton when she comes in.
What?
Anywho, yeah, I do. I really do. I was like, I think I recognize this room. Okay, so he goes home. And he takes a drink. He looks around. He sees the dagger, and he's like, "I got this idea. I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna follow this dude home." Stabs him like a gazillion times. Like this dude
He was taking
is stabbed.
all his frustrations out on this man. Like, like for every ring, I'm gonna give you a stab. I'm like for every phone call you got, I'm gonna give you this. Every single utterance you made, every popcorn piece you ate, every noise you made, every sneeze. When Eddie sneezed in the camera, I thought that was like the whole montage of Eddie and his dates
Yeah,
acting a fool at the opera was so fun and so interesting. You just seeing, and of course, we have Nathan Lane who's so expressive, who's so good at his craft, and just seeing him react to the different Eddie nonsense was really fun and really like this is kind of what you get Nathan Lane for. The kind of it is overacting, but in a good way.
it's not annoying overacting. Like he
Yeah,
he knows what the line is. He knows how to take it right up to that point. Yeah. So Eddie's dead. Eddie is
Eddie's
dead. He
gone.
dies on
Yeah.
the stairs. There's a lot of blood everywhere. And then, of course, Philip, being the opera fan that he is, I did not write down the Italian, but he says he's dead. And now I forgive him.
It was
Very
yeah,
dramatic.
the look on his face was like, I can't believe I did this. And then he's like, yes, he's dead. Now I forgive him. Like a lot of our criminals in Elsbeth, even though this is their first time usually committing such heinous acts or
Usually.
crimes. I mean, we have had a couple that have been
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
that have had other, this is a thing for them, but
Other
most of our
crimes,
people are
yeah.
first time murderers. But most of them are just like, if I murdered someone, even if I planned the murder, I'd be like, God, just murdered someone. But these people are just like, yeah, got what he was coming for him. Got what he got
Yeah,
what he
like,
deserved.
I feel better. And then Eddie's phone rings, and Philip is, like, really pissed off about this again because it's his phone.
Even in death, he's
So,
annoying me with his freaking ringtone.
as classic Elsbeth, we see most of the crime before we see Elsbeth. So we're keeping with the same sort of structure that we had last
Mhm.
season. And we also have the structure of, well, I don't know because we haven't seen another episode, but I'm assuming the detective role will still be
Rotating.
revolving. Yeah, we have a new detective, Detective Buzz Fleming.
Yeah.
I remembered. Detective Buzz Fleming. He is like on the beat, been working forever,
It
knows
was
all the things, all cases about sex and money. Like, listen to
yeah.
me, I'll show you the ropes.
He's a well, I mean, he's very different, right, from other detectives we've seen. This is a detective, and this is our first time meeting this detective. For those that are new to Elsbeth, like we
Yeah.
usually have a rotating cast of detectives, much like in if you watch The Good Wife, you got a rotating cast of judges. Our rotating is detectives in this series. So it's funny because Fleming's different from any other detective. Usually when we meet a detective, they're like, "Oh my god, it's Elsbeth. Oh, how are you going to annoy me today?" And he's actually pretty receptive to Elsbeth. He's like, "I've been around the block." He's like the Danny Glover character in Lethal Weapon. He's like,
Yes,
I'm
very much
I'm too
so.
old for this shit. Like I got 36 years in. I'm just waiting for my pension. I know how to run this. He's like you said, it's either about sex or money, and that's it. But he's not like resistant to Elsbeth doing her thing. He's like, hey, yeah, come on in. Like whatever you got, I'll take it.
He seems like a guy who has worked through the, like, I'm a detective serving the public. I am a good person. This is my job. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And switched over to the, this is my job. Like, I'm here from 9 to 5. Like, whatever,
Yep,
whatever happens
literally
during
from
these
9 to 5.
times.
Literally, when
Yeah,
5 o'clock
like,
comes, he's like, "I'm outie." So yeah, he's actually receptive to Elsbeth and her antics, and is willing to listen to her and willing to follow her leads, which is not what we're used to seeing in these detectives that we get. So that was really kind of a welcome like breath of fresh air that
yes.
we have this type of detective in the mix here.
And he knows so much, he lets us know that Elspeth is still there under the consent decree, which was a little confusing to us given the fact of what happened last season.
Yeah.
But apparently, the consent decree has been renewed for another year. So,
I wonder if that's going to be a thing for
okay.
every season Elsbeth is on. Like, well, and then the season premiere, like, I got funded for another year. So you're still here. I just wonder if they're ever going to change her designation. Like, is she ever just going to be, all right, like, the consent decree is over. We're just going to bring you in as, like, a consultant. That's what these
Yeah.
shows do.
Like,
Like, you're a consultant for us. So come on in. Like,
I
just
mean,
act like
she's
you're a
got a big
detective.
office. She's like, well, no, like, she's more than just someone on a consent decree, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, she's part of the team.
And
She's
it's
very central to the workings of this police department.
Yeah, and it's weird because the consent decree never really even comes into play any
No.
at all. Like in the first season, it was never really a thing. It was just a way to get her foot in the door in that police department. So the fact that they're still rolling with that conceit is very interesting.
Well, and the whole thing is she was there because she thought that, or there was corruption within the police department
And we figured out
with
the
Wagner,
corruption.
and we figured that out. So we were like, why is that still happening? But anywho, the consent decree has been renewed. When looking at the body, Eddie's body, the wallet is gone. There's opera tickets in his pockets. There's no prints on the phone, but the phone was like smashed into the railing
Yep.
and like obliterated. So Philip had some feelings about this phone after the murder was complete. Buzz, of course, with his mind, thinks it's got to be about money because the wallet's gone.
Yep.
It's just a random robbery. It's that easy. But then Kaya is like, oh, why would someone be so mad at this phone that they
Yeah.
would do this?
Why would someone break? And listen, I really appreciate the renewed we're actually going to make Kaya a
Yeah.
vital part of the investigation. She's actually going to come up with some clues. She's actually going to work this thing with Elsbeth. And it felt like a lot of in season one where it's just like Kaya's just kind of here. like for the ride. She's here for as a buddy to Elsbeth, and Kaya's not really going to contribute much to the case. But I feel like they really made it a point to say Kaya's going to help with the investigation. She's actually going to come up with some really good clues, and she's actually going to help Elsbeth in a meaningful way in this. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
pointing that out.
There's multiple times in this episode where Elsbeth is backing up Kaya instead of Kaya learning from Elsbeth.
Yeah, exactly.
As in season 1. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, I like how Fleming's like, it's either sex or money. It's money because the wallet's gone, and and Elsbeth brings up good points. And usually in our Elsbeth episode, that would be the point where like, I don't know why you guys are pushing this. It's obviously about money. Case closed. We're done. But then, Fleming tells Wagner's like, hey, Kaya and Ellsworth actually has some good points about how this might not just be about money. Like, oh, okay. And it's so funny in the episode. Even Ellsworth and Kaya look at each other like, oh, we're not used to this.
Yeah.
Like, this is new. This is different.
Yeah, I mean, like Fleming's opinion is going to change depending on what is in front of him, but
Mhm.
it's only one of two options. So later on,
Yeah.
he shows photos of the autopsy to both Kaya and Elspeth, and there's like all the selfies that he was taking at the opera. So he's like, nope, now it's a crime of sex.
Yeah.
Like it was a crime of money, but now it's a crime of sex. So he's just going to oscillate
Can
between
only
those
be
two
one or the
options.
other. Yeah.
Well, Nathan Lane did take this wallet. Philip did take this wallet, and he gets rid of it in I think the most Nathan Lane way he could have. It was very Nathan Lane coded, mustache on, like the wallet wrapped up in a newspaper,
Yeah.
just kind of like
It-
dropped off on a bench.
he makes a scene without making a scene. And so he's trying to be incognito, but obviously it's just like, what is that weird man doing with the weird hat and the weird mustache? Like he thinks he's being stealth, but he's not really.
Yeah, and we learn later on also that Eddie went to a club after the opera and there was a fight after the club. So now, after even though there were all these pictures with all these dates, and Fleming's like, well, it's a crime of sex. Now that there was a fight and the wallet was
We're
found,
back to
we're
robbery.
back to money.
Yeah.
So we're going back and forth. But Kaya and Fleming have this like nice little moment where they are interviewing people at the park where the wallet was found. And we learned that Kaya became a cop due to cop shows. And she always just loved that like bad guys got caught. And it's like, one of us, you're one of us. Like
Yeah.
she's talking to the audience of this show. And she actually like does a lot of good investigation here. Fleming's like, I'm gonna look under the bench, and it takes him like
20 minutes.
forever.
20 minutes to
And
get under the bench.
meanwhile, yeah, Kaya's talking to the chess dudes who are playing chess in the park, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we saw this dude with a mustache, and this is what happened."
Yeah, he thought he was being stealthy, but he wasn't. So yeah, Kai is actually getting her hands dirty, interviewing people and doing more than I guess a beat cop would is what they want us to really take from that. Like she's doing more than an average patrol person would do.
And she's on her own here. Like Elsbeth isn't
Yeah.
there. And at this point in the episode, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on with Kaya, and presumably for the rest of the season. But she, is still thinking her path to becoming a detective is very short. So she's taking the lead. She's learning as much as she can. She's putting herself in that I'm doing the job I want type of position here, and learning as much as she can from Buzz Fleming about how to look for wallets. And also, this is when his alarm goes off. It's 5 p.m. Gotta go. Don't get paid for overtime. See you later.
We're
And
out
I
of
mean,
here.
like this is like classic elder co-worker advice. Like,
Yep.
don't do anything extra. stay in your lane. Do what you
Listen,
need to do.
quiet quitting was started by the boomer generation. Don't let anybody, tell you any
Yeah,
different.
yeah, for sure. Then we get to see Elsbeth in her new office, which was Lieutenant Noonan's office, who is in jail at some point from last season.
Mhm.
She has an upgraded screen. Her screen is now horizontal instead of
Yeah.
vertical. It's
So
one of
but
those
this
fancy like portrait TV things.
so she moved she's not in the closet anymore because at the end of season
No.
one she was in the little broom closet that she kind of spruced up. Now she has moved over into Noonan's office, which we'll talk about the issues with that later on down the line. But yeah, she got a nice bigger office. She's got, like you said, she now has a screen horizontal. I actually really liked the window video monitor. That was actually kind of
Yeah.
spiffy. But now she got a big screen TV up on the board, kind of also in like a frame, and she's kind of using that as her I guess evidence viewing. I don't know.
Yeah, she's taking a look at all the photos from Eddie's cell phone and noticing all the selfies and Nathan Lee's Philip's faces behind this person. So she's picking up on the fact that Philip might not be too happy that
Mhm.
Eddie is sitting in front of him. So they decide to go to the opera and use the seats that Eddie had and put themselves in front of Philip. And so they meet Philip at the opera. I knew Elsbeth was going to love the opera. Like
Yeah.
it's so dramatic, it's so emotional, there's so much beauty. This woman is crying like 2 seconds to Madame Butterfly. She's she's feeling it, which is endearing herself to Philip. Like this, usually we've seen Elsbeth do things because she knows how to get into someone's mind and like become their friend. But this is a pure moment of Elsbeth being Elsbeth and also becoming, endearing to Philip and someone that Philip would want to talk to.
Yeah, I almost thought that she was trying to use herself as bait maybe and, like, causing a scene so
Yeah.
that maybe Philip would be pissed and try and murder her. Like, I didn't know if that was the case, but yeah, she's actually trying to ingratiate herself with Philip because she is showing that she has an appreciation for the opera and for the performances, which Philip is really gonna get a kick into. So
Yeah.
she knows how to get into Philip's good graces.
But she didn't have to work too hard on
No.
this one.
Mm-mm. Not at all.
And she like tells them straight up, we're with the police. And you kind of see Philip go, okay, like
Mhm.
interesting. Also at the opera, they see an old friend, Dr. Yablonsky, the plastic surgeon from last season.
I
He's
had
been
to
doing a lot of chins.
Yeah, I really had to think. I was like, Sky. Oh, the plastic surgery episode. That's where he's from. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Listen, I am really actually. First of all, I'm really impressed, and I didn't think that Elizabeth was a show that would do this because most procedurals don't really do this a lot. They don't really give a lot of callbacks to the first season. But we have Yablonsky here in the beginning of the episode. We had the reference to
Mateo.
Mateo from last season. We had I didn't know if you caught this, but on a park bench was what's her name? Someone who was a realtor was on a bench. Uh, was
Oh,
it Jenna
good
Maraski?
eyes.
The realtor from
Yes.
last
Yeah.
season. One of her
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
ads is on a bench, so I really enjoy the little callbacks from last season. And Yablonsky was one that was kind of living, like those other ones are just kind of visual callbacks. This guy is actually was a part of the show and is back and giving us information in a good way.
And an opera fan.
Hmm.
And telling us that, Philip Cross, he's been here all the time, see him every time I'm here. They call him the aisle seat scold. He's a lawyer. He has a late wife. And while Elsbeth is talking to Dr. Yablonsky, Kaya again is on her own investigation. Very smart to ask the ushers. Ushers know everything.
Yeah.
Ushers know everything about everything. They know when the show starts, stops, what's in between, who's leaving, what's going on. So Kaya goes to talk to the usher to find out about the timing of when Eddie left that night before he was murdered. And she finds out that he did take the call. And Dr. Oblonsky tells Elsbeth and Kaya that there's a bar where all the singers go. So they're like, okay, we got to go check that out. And Elsbeth and Philip have a conversation. Like, it was, again, it wasn't Elsbeth like trying too hard in the situation. She was like kind of trying to feel Philip out, but she also was like, oh my God, I love the opera. The opera is so cool.
But it was also this thing that Elsbeth does, which is interesting because it's an interesting tactic because it's kind of like a hey, like we're on to you and we're investigating you.
Yep.
We're on to what you did because Philip talks about he does what all these criminals do. He's like, hey, I have evidence that I wasn't at the crime scene. Here you go. Here, take it all, which obviously triggers us. But she's like, oh, you're trying a little too hard to prove that you were not at the crime scene, that you were definitely here. And then Philip says something about someone sneaking out of the back of the restaurant. She's like, oh,
Yep.
so what you're saying is it's possible to sneak out and make it look like you were here the whole time. And he's like, you can see the recognition of Phil's face. He's like, oh, okay, you're smart. I'm gonna
He's like,
watch.
game recognizes game. He's
Yeah,
like, I see this.
I have to watch myself around you. I can see that. So this was a little thing that Elsbeth likes to do. Like, hey, it kind of makes the people freak out. Like that's the thing that Elsbeth wants. Is she wants people to freak out and try and cover their tracks and just kind of give themselves away. She's like, you know that we're like onto you, right? So just
Well, and she's also really good about doing something like that, like, "Yo, I'm onto you. I know that you could have framed your own alibi,
Mhm.
but also, I'm so jealous of you.
Mhm.
You know
Yeah.
so much about opera. I wish I had someone who could teach me. I just wouldn't know where to start." Like, she's so good about putting herself in that position right after kind of disarming someone and letting them know that she's on to them. Like,
Yeah, she's like
okay, like I
she's
see you, but then also like you're so cool. I love you. Let me stroke your ego a little bit.
yeah, she's using his hubris against him to be like, "I wish there was some sort of way I could learn about the opera," which is just like, "I'm trying to get closer to you so that I can figure out how you did this, so I can get the proof that I need to really get you into jail." And of course, Philip, who's somebody who obviously has a huge ego, is very impressed with himself, thinks there is no danger of him getting caught because this is the perfect murder, which is what all of our criminals think. This is I committed the perfect murder. There's no way anyone could figure out how I did this. So, what would be the harm of letting Elsbeth into my world? She wants to be taught. Like I would love to lecture someone about opera for 4 hours. It's my kink to tell somebody I know more than them. So I would love to take this opportunity to educate Elsbeth. When in reality, Elsbeth's like, oh yeah, come on, give me all the info. Let me
Keep
into
talking,
yeah,
keep
let me into
talking.
your world. Let me figure out how you did this and what little piece of evidence I need to get my hands on to get you to to finger you for the murder here.
Yeah, and also he's got his I think he's a little like, I can outsmart you because I'm a lawyer too. Like,
Hmm.
let me like meet you. It's very only reminiscent because we're also watching The Good Wife, but it's
Hmm.
very Carrie and Alicia kind of like going back to back
Yeah,
type of I'm gonna one up you at the in the season one at least.
it's very
So
Nathan Lane's very like for our Good Wife fans out there. He's very Colin Sweeney esque, right? He's very
yes,
like
oh
I
yeah,
I did this. There's no way you can prove it. So I'm gonna just kind of flaunt all over the place and be aloof and be an ass. And so it's
yeah.
really in that kind of vein of things.
Yes. The police are following up with the fight that Eddie was in after the opera, and he found they are interviewing Sean and also like all of the girls that he went out
Yeah.
with. There was a great montage of like, oh, there was more than one. There's more than just me. Like, yes. And Sean is like, he was more of my front of me, not my friend, but I did also sleep with Alexa because that's just the kind of dude I am. And I called him twice. The first call is the call that Eddie took when he left the opera, and then the second call went to voicemail. So this is again just confirming that Eddie did take that phone call.
Yeah, and they
So
well, Kaya does. He's like, "Hey, like I know that we're obsessed with the phone call that he got when he was getting murdered or whatever, but she uses like I think it was the first phone call we got to worry about because that was the one at the opera, and that was the one that caused some sort of ruckus that someone may be mad at him
yeah,
about." And so again, it's just they're trying to hit us over the head with like, "Hey, Kaya's a lot smarter than you think she is. Like we're gonna, this is why she's gonna be a great detective," which is good. I
she is.
appreciate them calling that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Elspeth goes for her opera education, bringing an opera cake to Philip. Very,
No, yeah.
very Elspeth. She gets a tour of his museum. You can see a mustache that
Mhm.
he probably used for dropping off the wallet. And there's also a knife. And so he tells the story about how this is the knife that Tosca used to kill Baron in the first opera he ever saw. And he's like really really into it and talks for 4 hours. This is the famous 4 hour education of opera. And unfortunately Elsbeth did bring up Andrew Lloyd Webber, which only gets him to talk more. Andrew Lloyd Webber is not an opera person, he is a musical person, so this would get someone who likes opera
Riled
to
up.
talk
Yeah.
a lot. She also is very astute to notice that there are no photos of Evelyn around. There's all of this opera paraphernalia, artifacts, things like that, but there's no photos of Evelyn, his dear wife that he saves a seat for every time he goes to the opera. To which, again, very crazen, very like confidently, Philip is like, yeah, there's no Evelyn. I've never been married. Like, I just did this because I wanted good seats at the opera.
That was such a fantastic twist because I honestly I bought into the Evelyn lie and the myth. Like I thought we were going to be a lot more compassionate towards Philip because he's going to tell us like the story about how his poor Evelyn like got sick or something, and that they both love the opera, and that's why he goes every week to the opera because Evelyn loved the opera. He's like, no, there was never any Evelyn. Like that was just a lie that I could use to save a seat for no one. Like so I could
Yeah,
just be by myself at the opera, so I don't have to deal with a seatmate. Well, that's why. Like so, bro, why didn't you buy? I mean, you seem like you got money. Why didn't you buy just all like 6 seats? The two in front of you, the two behind you, and then the one next to you, just so you could have like this bubble of like of
I
silence
have
around
done
you.
that.
Yeah,
I have
you've
done
done
that
that.
yeah, not at an opera, at a High School Musical.
Oh
Because, like,
gosh, really?
during like during the pandemic, I was going with my parents to go see my sister. She's a pit director at our high school, and so we were going to go see the musical. And it was like no one is sitting around us. So I mean,
Well,
it
listen,
was High School
but that
Musical,
was a
High
good
School Musical
reason.
prizes.
But that was a good
Yeah,
reason though,
it was,
because
but it
of
was like
COVID.
so
It wasn't because you're
luxurious.
antisocial.
No, but it was so great. I was like, I would do this all the time if I could.
Listen, I must admit myself that I recently took a bus trip to New York City, and on the
Yeah, did you
bus,
buy the seat next door?
no, I didn't. I literally put my backpack on the seat next to me. And was like, I
See?
dare somebody to come up and tell me that they want to sit next to me. Like, I dare you. Like, it's not like it's not like I put the backpack like on the floor on my seat. I put it in the seat next to me. He's like, go ahead. I dare you to ask me to move my backpack. It's kind of like a seat saved. Like, Forrest Gump was like, seat saved, seat saved.
Yeah.
Like, nah. If you want to sit here, you have to actually ask me if you want to sit here. And that's a thing of like
It means you have to talk to me. That
exactly,
means
exactly. So it's like a little form of protection. So I kind of know what that's like to be just like, I'm gonna put this here because no one's gonna talk to me. I mean, if you have a choice of just an empty seat sitting there where you don't have to talk to anyone to sit there, or a seat where you got to ask the guy to be like, hey, can you move this so I can sit there? They're gonna choose the empty seat every time. So just a little
yeah.
thing on my part.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
listen on the way to and on the way back. I had a row to
Nice.
myself. Felt really good. Took a little nap.
Nice.
Didn't have to worry about snoring next to anyone. It's all good. It's all good.
I love it when that happens. Sometimes flying Southwest, you have to also come up with like creative because it's like you get on like a bus.
Mhm.
So if you get my plan, get the window seat and then pretend to sleep. And nobody wants to like wake me up
Right,
to like
exactly.
sit in the middle seat. And it hasn't paid off every time, but it pays off every once in a
Maybe
while.
just sit in the
So
aisle and pretend to be asleep until you take off. Because then someone definitely has to wake you up to like move into the window
yeah, yeah,
seat.
yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
I just like being cozy in the window
listen, neither one
seat.
of us are like very like
Social
social
people.
people. So it's like we will go to great lengths to
We're
try
like,
and not talk to other
yeah.
people.
We're like, Philip, we get it.
Yeah,
Like, I totally
I'm with you,
understand.
Philip. I hate people that are annoying and loud that are near me. I don't know if I would murder people if that happened, but I understand. I get the I get the concept. I get how awful that is.
Yeah, so way to go, Philip, on creating Evelyn and being the seat hero for himself.
Mhm.
I did this conversation did end up bringing up like Evelyn's like, but aren't you like annoyed by people who don't appreciate the opera so much? And what do you do when that happens? And this is like the most opera. Like I swear, someone from the Gilded Age would have said this too. But like he says opera was created so shallow rich people could dress up and look at each other. One learns to tune these things out.
Yeah,
So
it's like they watched
he's
the
getting
Gilded
himself
Age.
in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and I like how he's like, haha. He's like, good try, Elsworth.
Yeah.
You tried to catch me, but no, no. There have been a holes at the opera for a long time, so I haven't murdered anyone ever. So I definitely didn't murder Eddie. Yeah, I like how he's recognizing the kind of back and forth he and Elsworth are getting at. But again, he's so sure that he's not getting caught that he's fine with welcoming Elsbeth into his little lair.
Oh, well, and he takes it one step further and like playing into her appreciation of the opera. Like, oh, if you love opera so much, you can have one of my pairs of opera glasses. Like,
Mhm.
just take one. And Elsbeth, being ever so prepared with all of her bags that she could ever have, she takes an evidence bag out of her bag to take the opera glasses. And Philip sees this in the mirror as he's setting up one more aria for them to listen to before she leaves.
Yeah, I'm sure he's just like, oh, you dumb Elspeth. There's nothing on there that's gonna finger me. So he basically just lets her do it. He's like, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out.
Elsbeth is doing more opera research in her office and watching like a YouTube video or an interview or something where she learns about a performance of Tosca where this knife did not retract. Like there the it's supposed to retract so nobody dies on stage,
Mhm.
but in this one performance it did not retract, and the actor was stabbed. And it just so happened that Philip was in the audience that day and he ended up getting this knife as a gift for his going to his first opera. And I
Yeah.
like how the actor's like, I gave him the knife. He was a strange child.
He's like, it was a strange thing to do, but he was a strange child. And I mean, because Philip had told the story about the knife to Elsbeth when she was there with him. He's like, yeah, I got this knife in 1968. And so Elsbeth hears this performance in 1968 about the knife. She's like, oh, okay, so this is the same knife. So, I mean, this obviously gives Elsbeth the light bulb idea that we've been waiting for her to get for the whole episode, her eureka moment. So, I mean, listen, is it semi convenient that she she was watching this YouTube clip and this was the story told? Sure, but doesn't matter. Not really. So, I,
Elsbeth.
but it's thanks to Elsbeth's intelligence and her memory that she was able to connect the dots here and to kind of figure out the case in a way, I guess.
Yeah, and so she's like, "Okay, if Philip's gonna be, like, super confident with me, I'm gonna be super confident with him. I'm just gonna go ask him
Yeah.
about this knife. Like, I know about this knife now, I'm gonna go ask him, and, like, can we test this knife to see if there's any of Eddie's DNA on it?" Philip's like, "No, like, you can't take it. There's also no motive." But that's when she notices that there's a switch on this
Mhm.
knife, and the switch basically prevents it from being retractable. One of the things that Kaya had noticed when looking at the autopsy results was the fact that there were marks on Eddie that looked like the hilt of the dagger without the blade. And so they've been trying to like sort out how this was going to happen. But Philip is very, very confident, saying, "You won't be able to get a warrant. Real life is a lot less dramatic than the opera,"
Yeah,
which I don't think so. I think all life is dramatic.
very much so.
So there's an issue with DNA. There's no DNA on the knife. There's no DNA matching like anywhere. It's not matching with Eddie. It's not matching with Philip. It's not matching with Sean, our prime suspect from the fight. And Philip knew this. He knew that wasn't going to do. But Elsbeth, in her classic way to conveniently end a story, brings everybody, like she brings the whole cast and crew
Yep.
into Philip's house, and including Fitz, who was great to see. Fritz, who is the like Philip's mortal enemy of opera collecting,
Yeah, because
because
Fritz is trying to get his hands on Phil's collection for whatever museum or whatever he works for. And so yeah, they're like you said, mortal enemies.
yeah, and like the question is like how can we prove that Philip did this? And so basically they ended up proving this by getting DNA off of the costume that the original actor who was stabbed with the knife
Gino Gatti.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gino Gozzi, getting DNA off of costume, comparing it to the DNA on Eddie's body, not on the
Mhm.
knife, because the DNA had been transferred
From the
to Eddie's
knife to
body
Eddie's body. Yeah.
after or before Philip like cleaned it off. So this
Let,
is like a complicated DNA transfer
let this
situation.
let this be a lesson to you, future murderers. Wash your murder weapons even before you commit the
Before,
murder. Go in with
yeah.
a clean murder weapon. Also clean it
I mean,
afterwards.
it's just a good reminder, cleanliness is next to godliness.
There you go.
Like
Yeah.
just take care of things.
Yeah.
I love that Buzz was like, huh, it wasn't about sex or money.
Weird. Like
What do you know?
Fleming's
What do you
obviously had a
know?
very like mundane police life up till now. Like his only cases have been about sex or money. Like no, there's been no other ambiguity involved in his cases. It's either sex or it's money. He's had a very like very normal 36-year detective career. Whereas Elsbeth and Kaya's all their cases have been just like these
Everything but.
outstanding, yeah, everything but sex and money. Well, I mean, some of it has been sex and money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but all these
But
other outstanding reasons for murder have run into Kaya and Elsbeth, but Fleming, no, it's just always been sex or murder, sex or
black and white.
money. Yeah,
Yeah, two different options. And But as he's being taken away by the police, Philip still has this compassion and this love for opera that he just wants to continue fostering Elsbeth's love of it as well, and basically offers her his seats. Like, you can take my seats because I'm not going to be there for a while. And she's like, I love it, but I don't need to go all the time. Like, it's a
Yeah.
one or two times a year thing for me.
Yeah, because he's like, "Did you really like the opera?" She's like, "Yeah, yeah, it was good. It was fun." He's like, "What do you want to take my seat?" She's like, "No, no, I, I definitely don't. I definitely don't. It's not a every week thing for me. It's not a thing I would do every week."
And he leaves saying in Italian, "The comedy is over," which is a closing line from an opera that I forgot to write down. But
Yeah,
he lived, he breathed, he will die opera, this
yeah.
character. So
Listen, Nathan Lane was a fun addition to our murderers row, to our rogues.
yes.
You think about all the fantastic we've had in our murders gallery and from season one. Nathan Lane is a great addition. Nathan Lane leaves me hoping that there's some other opera related case that we've stumbled upon to later in the season, and we have to go to Nathan Lane. We have to go to Philip
Like
Cross,
in jail.
yeah, to in jail to ask him about something. I feel like that's coming in some part of the season. We're going to revisit one of our past murderers for some information. That's got to be coming at some point.
It's a classic king verse thing that will
Yeah,
happen is someone will have information on something else and they have to go
yeah,
like find that person. Overall, solid murder. Like
really
solid
good.
murder case, pretty good. That wasn't the only thing that was happening this episode though. We did get some developments on what's going on with the police people in general.
Mhm.
First, we learned that Elsbeth's consent decree was renewed for an entire year. Second thing we learned is that they had to replace Noonan. So we have a new lieutenant. And this guy is by the book. And also
Very.
I do want to point out he is Asian. It's great to see an Asian character on a TV show. You don't see that very often. But unfortunately, he is cast in a very by the book, very math oriented like
Okay, yeah.
type of situation. So like, yay, but also But anyway, he's new and no one really knows how to feel about this.
And what's his name? Steve Connor? Is that his name?
Yes,
Uh,
I think so.
so yeah, I mean, it's funny because no one seemed to think of like, oh, Noonan's gone. Someone's got to replace him. Mostly probably because Noonan didn't really do much. So it's like it seemed like he was just kind of there. He almost seemed like Wagner's secretary in a way. So
He
it's
was
like,
like moving boxes,
yeah.
doing things.
So I was like,
Yeah,
oh, someone's going to replace him and actually do the job. What? And this guy is very regimented. He's very by the book. And it's interesting because, we come into this situation where Wagner has this position of like, I let my friendship with Noonan blind me to what he was
right.
really doing. So I need someone that I don't have a past connection with, that we aren't buddies. So I need someone that is just totally I have no connection to. So Steve is the guy. Steve Connor is the guy. He's very Steve's like, I understand. You don't want someone that you're friends with. I will never be your friend. We will never be buddies. I am very like I have no friends. Like I just do my job like a robot and I go home. So we will not have a connection. Don't worry about that. So like I'm the guy for you. I'm the man for the
Yeah.
job. Now listen, Steve Connor is very, as we said, regimented by the book. I feel like by the end of the season, we're going to get Steve out of his shell. Steve's going to be a
Oh
friend.
yeah.
Steve's going to be a friend of ours. He's going to be one of the gang. As much as he doesn't want to be, he will be turned into one of our friends.
Well, it's I think already sort of happening in a way because one of the things that Steve finds out is that unfortunately when Kaya was entered into the academy she didn't have all the college credits that she needed
Yeah.
to be accepted into the role. And so this is like of all the places to start like on your first day he's checking like everyone's credentials, which I guess makes sense, but I mean like did you find a place to work? Like are you
I mean, he's
did you
he's
fill out your W4? Like are you
yeah, he's just
are you
diving.
in payroll? What's going on?
He's diving into he's getting into everything. And so he's on the wrong foot with us because he came up
Yes.
he came up with this well, it's not really a clerical error, it's more of like a but it's weird because when we find out this thing where Kaya does not have enough technically didn't have enough credits to actually be a cop. in the first
Right.
place. And Kaya's like, well, the recruiter told me that I had enough credits because I took AP classes in high school. And Wagner makes this comment. He's like, yeah, well, the recruiters, they'll tell you anything to kind of get you in the door. It's like, so they just kind of overlooked it. So it was a very interesting development in Kaya's journey here.
I feel like it's gonna come back. Like, I feel like there will be something, like, as this journey, because she does have to go get these credits and she
Mhm.
has to balance, like, going to school and also working and still trying to, like, provide for herself and
Yeah,
her house. I have a feeling like she might learn more about that decision as she goes through this journey.
maybe. I think it's a very interesting way to take the character because, as we were finishing season one, we were like, the obvious move here is to make Kaya a detective and to
Yeah.
have her just partner with Elsbeth. They'll be the partners that they already are. Just be Kaya will have a different, she'll be dressed differently, she'll have a different rank. So I mean, I'm surprised they took it this way. Where they're like, oh, it's going to be on hold for a bit. I almost was thinking, we were surmising when season one ended, like, how are we going to come into season two? Are we going to come into season two and Kai will already be detective, or should be on her way
Right.
to detective? I do think it's very interesting how they went very meta with how we were reintroduced back to Elsbeth and Kaya, where they're walking down the street like. It's weird. We didn't have any big cases
Yeah.
during the summer. It's like
Yeah.
it's like almost breaking the fourth wall to be like, we
Yeah.
didn't do anything while you guys weren't watching us. We promise. Like we were so boring. I I almost wanted to be to name off cases they had taken that we didn't get to see, like some just weird, outrageous things. Like, remember the case with the squid and the seafood market? Remember that? Like, just to kind of give us a feel of what they've been doing. But apparently, they haven't been doing much over the summer break. I just thought it was a very kind of fourth wall breaking meta way to talk about the break we had from Elsbeth. So I thought that was very fun. But yeah, to have Kaya have this setback is interesting. And I think we'll get some fun moments with Kaya being in school and what that's like taking these
Yeah.
college courses.
Yeah, I think it'll be good.
Ooh, ooh,
When
ooh, ooh, ooh. Is Kaya gonna like find romance at school? Like, is this
not at
is
school. Well, maybe with,
maybe a
like, a
professor? Maybe
professor
not her
or a
professor, but
TA.
another professor, maybe
Yeah,
that she
or
like.
maybe there's, like, another adult in class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's where we're going. And it was interesting because it feels like we opened the door a smidge into Kaya's backstory where she's like, yeah, me and my mom used to sit and watch cop shows. Like, are we gonna open that door some more into Kaya's past and see what her childhood was like, possibly? Kaya's someone who, is a homeowner, she's established herself, but I wonder if we're gonna get more of a look into what makes Kaya Kaya.
I hope so. I hope so, and I think they are kind of positioning Elsbeth in that more of supporting Kaya
Hmm.
type of role because later on, of course, she's gonna bring her a tote with all
Yeah.
of her school
Oh,
supplies
so
ready
sweet.
to go, help pick out the classes. So she's gonna walk this journey alongside Kaya and help her be successful in this way. Like when she bought that suit and then Kaya put the suit on and like she looks so good and ready to go. And so like they are in the sisterhood of New York detective people.
It's almost like Elsa was kind of taking on this like motherly role as well.
Mother,
It's like
yeah.
it's interesting how they can kind of switch from like partners to sisters to this kind of mother daughter thing. Cause I almost thought at the end where Kyle was like, I still know how I'm gonna pay for school. Elsa's like, it's okay,
That's
sweetie.
what this
It's okay. I got it. I got you. I'm paying for your courses. You don't have to pay for anything. I'm here for you. I almost think Kaya would probably be a person that just be like, nope, not gonna take it.
yeah.
Not gonna take your money.
And I think Elspeth knows that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I
Like
think
so
that's
she's
where
like,
that would
I'm
be.
gonna have to support her in a way she would want to
Yeah, I
be
bought you back to
supported.
school supplies. Got you a little tote. Got you some materials. So sweet. Oh,
But when this is all being explained to Kaya in the police department, Wagner's just like telling Steve, like, don't worry. Like it means we're gonna handle this. And so I
yeah.
think that's like the start of the door that like you were talking about of like him coming widening his view, becoming part of the gang is like the fact that Wagner is going to show him how to live in the gray
How to be
area of
compassionate.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Show some emotion. And I did
yeah,
like I wish we probably could have gotten a little more of it though, with Wagner being more of a mentor to Kaya. Like we kind of saw it in that scene where Wagner's like, listen, we're gonna like, I'm here for you. We got this. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we're gonna figure this out. And I kind of wish we had more of that because Wagner's the one that wants to put Kaya on this detective track because he sees that in Kaya. I hope we get more of that down the line too. Which this connection with Wagner and Kaya also.
Well, and I think that's really important given the conversations that were had last season about how Wagner got on the force and
Yeah.
how he was appointed captain and all of that stuff. So I think I hope that they pull on that thread a little more. And Kaya was complimented by Fleming this
Mhm.
entire episode too. Like this one has the making of a first rate detective. So I think we're gonna get there. It's just gonna be a little bit different of a journey than we thought.
Yeah, it's interesting roadblock they threw in front of her. I thought was very interesting. I was like, okay, I didn't see that coming, which is it's always good for a show to throw
Yeah.
stuff at us that we didn't see coming. Because I mean, a lot of times like to try and guesstimate what's going to happen on the show, and it's good when a show's like, you thought it was going to happen, but no, we're gonna do something a little different.
Just kidding. One thing stood out to me in the conversation that Elsbeth was having with Kaya while they were picking out college classes, because Kaya was feeling really down
Mhm.
on herself. And Elsbeth says, "It was a dumb mistake that has come back to bite you. You'll make a fresh start." And I was like, "What all last season was about Elsbeth making a fresh start.
Mhm.
She's like starting this whole new world. So what dumb mistake from Elsbeth's past is going to come back to bite her?" And it's like I wrote the show. It's like it happened. Elsbeth, of course, is walking her dog that she remembered that she had, and um, walking her dog, and a car pulls up and says, "Elsbeth, get in." And because we are the dedicated podcasters that we are and watch with subtitles, we got some
Mhm.
information on who was in this car.
Yeah.
Jason, who'd you find out?
So listen, if you don't want to be spoiled at all, I don't think this is a huge spoiler,
This is not huge.
but just know that we know who the person in the car is. Okay. So of course, like Marissa said, we watch with subtitles, so we know because when the person spoke, all the subtitles is like, what's his name?
How's the name?
Yeah, Schmidt tells her to get in. It was a Christian Schmidt, I think that's his name.
Carter.
Carter Schmidt tells her to get in. It's like, okay, who's Carter Schmidt? So like, am I supposed to know that name? So of course I look up the name. I'm like, what up, Carter Schmidt, Elsbeth, and of course, Carter Schmidt was actually on The Good Wife for a total of 5 episodes. So it's someone that is kind of sort of known to us in a way. And I looked up who the actor was and everything. And if any of you out there have watched the show Smash from back in the day, probably around the time The Good Wife was a thing, you'll recognize him from that show. He's one of the main characters on that show. And on The Good Wife, he actually was, he's usually opposing our heroes most of the time. And I cannot tell you any of the storylines, any of the plot lines he was involved in, but I do remember his face in the show because I remember watching the show. I'm like, oh, it's the guy from Smash. And then when I watched The Good Wife, of course, we have not in our rewatch so far. We have not come across Carter Schmidt yet. I don't think
Right.
he actually comes in until season 3, so we got a ways to go until we meet Carter Schmidt. But Carter Schmidt did interact with our heroes, Alicia, Carrie, all that. He also interacted with Elsbeth, so this is a known person to Elsbeth.
Mhm.
So listen, this is big. It may not seem big, but this is big because this is a crack in the door of
Yeah.
introducing good wife, good fight characters onto Elsbeth, which I was doing a little more like kind of reading about this. So where the Kings in season 1 said
Yeah.
absolutely no real links to the good wife. We had the mention of Carrie early on in season 1 of Elsbeth, but outside of that, the Kings had this rule of like we're not referencing good wife, good fight. We want Elsbeth to stand on its own. But now they say, the Kings are saying, listen, Elsbeth has now been established as its own thing. So now we can start bringing in some threads of good wife, good fight into Elsbeth. So listen, hopefully will be just the start of something more that we can get a real deal player onto Elsbeth from Good Wife or Good Fight.
Like if we were not doing the rewatch of The Good Wife, I would go find his episodes and watch them
Yeah.
because I have a feeling that there was like a mistake in a case. If he was on prosecution, and Elsbeth would probably be helping on the defense
Hmm.
side of things. There's gotta be something there that happened that brings him back into her world. So it's very exciting. I mean, I don't expect to see big names from either The Good Wife or The Good Fight. It would be great if like Christine Baranski was like walking down the street. Like I would love it, like in so many ways. But because she could be Christine Baranski in this universe, and then she could also be
Yeah,
Diane Lockhart
true.
in this
Yeah.
universe, like she could be anywhere. So it would be fun to see, or like a phone call or something like that. But the fact that they picked a smaller character is also very intriguing to me, because that's like picking up a branch on the timeline and going in a different direction that we never thought that this universe would go.
Yeah.
So
Eh,
I'm excited to see where this goes for the rest of the season.
yeah, I hope
And
this.
I also like, do you think she gets in?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know she gets in. Okay, because I've seen screenshots from the second episode. She definitely gets in.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there could be a world where we get a Kalinda showing up here.
Oh my god, I'd love
Not
it.
probably not this season, but maybe in like a season 3 or 4. Like I would love a Kalinda to show up. I would love a Marissa sounds like a very attainable, you know, an attainable star to get on this show. Marissa has moved to New York and works with Eli in New York or something, and maybe we get an Eli cameo. Listen, we know they're out there. We know the Kings have good relationships with these people, so let's not. I feel like we can get there at some point. But yeah, very exciting that we're actually getting someone that was on The Good Wife onto this show to show that it can happen. That they are meshing the two worlds together now. So
Yeah.
very fun. I wanted to get your thought on something else. Like, we had our one and done murder. I think maybe to spice up this show, I think I would love like a season long villain. Like,
Like kind of like how Wagner, or and like the suspense of like what she was doing was under the undercurrent of season 1. Like, or are you thinking like a serial killer?
yeah, like a serial
That's
killer.
also
Like
happening.
maybe Nathan Lane gets away with murdering Eddie, right?
Mhm,
And we
mhm,
spend the
mhm.
whole season trying to like nail Philip down. Maybe Philip is making other murders for different dumb reasons, like someone cut in line in the grocery store and he decided
Or
to kill him. Like, yeah,
he's also he was also on Only Murders in the Building. So wonder if there's like a crossover that happens where there's like murders happening at the Arconia,
listen,
and they have to like
in a
talk to
world
each other.
in a world where Abbott Elementary can cross over with It's Always Sunny in
Exactly.
Philadelphia, it can happen. Anything's possible.
Exactly.
But yeah, I feel
Exactly.
like maybe to spice this up, we need to have a villain that Elsbeth can't catch for some reason, and we're spending the season tracking this killer to try and nail him for this crime, and we just can't figure it out for a while. I think that would be a fun way to spice things up, to change it. We still have our cases of the week, but in the background is also this villain that we just cannot pin down.
Well, maybe that'll come in with Carter. Maybe Carter needs a lawyer.
Maybe.
Maybe, and she's got to get back into, she's got to go into the courtroom a little bit, which would
Ooh.
kind of diminish a little bit of the cases of the week, which I don't think they would diminish 100%, but like right now it's kind of like 80-20 in terms of the content that's being shown on the show. But if she has to go back into the law and Kaya's going into school,
Mhm.
then like the cases would be wouldn't be as much as the focus, which I don't know if that's what they want to do. Or like I do see what you're saying. I think there does need to be like something that spans a couple of episodes that puts Elsbeth in a little bit of a pickle,
Yeah.
because she's happy living her life in New York, or something with her son needs to come
Yeah.
back, because
Yeah.
she keeps mentioning him and we never see him, hear from him. Like we have heard from him in season 1, but something needs to happen there. So I wonder, there's options with this Carter Schmidt situation to kind of give us a little bit of that.
Yeah. Ooh, 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 ooh. Or,
Oh,
or, or, what if Elsbeth
yeah.
has to like go back to court to defend someone that is wrongly accused, that maybe she wrongly accused in a mistake, and now she feels
Yep.
like she has to make up for the mistake by defending them in court and fingering the real bad guy. I think
And she has to like argue against her past arguments, because
maybe,
like,
yeah.
they would bring up her past arguments in court.
I think seeing Elsbeth back in court is definitely something I want to see in this episode, because we recently talked about Elsbeth being in court on The Good Wife, So it's,
Mhm.
it would be fun to see her back in court on Elsbeth and see how that goes. So many options the show could do. I just hope they take the initiative to branch out from their normal, because I mean
Yeah.
last season when they decided to do the where we didn't know who the murderer was, that was one of their best episodes last season. So I really hope they step outside the box a little more.
Yeah, it'd be good to see.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, that's the first episode of season two. Oh. I'm
Oh,
I'm
oh.
still looking at Wagner's wife. By the way, don't think I forgot.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Wag,
yeah.
I'm waiting because there's got to be another shoe to drop in that thing. Because the way they were positioning her, it's like she's definitely a bad guy here last season. I'm still on the lookout for that. By the way, I wanted to make that known in episode one of season two, just so when it comes up, I can be like,
You're calling
I
it.
called it. All right. But that's that's it for season two, episode one. Great episode. Marissa,
Yeah.
where can people find you and what you're doing, what you're all about right now?
You can find me on Instagram and Threads at It's Me Marissa G. I have a couple of different projects going, one about television, one about technology, because you know what, Jason? You can't fit me into a tote bag.
Yeah.
Okay? Like I'm multiple tote bags. So I have multiple things going on. But if you want to learn about any of them, that is where you can find me. What about you?
Yeah, for me, I got a bunch of stuff going on as well. Over on the Rob Has Podcast Network, we are wrapping up coverage on Love Is Blind. We just released
Mm.
our episodes 10 and 11 of Love Is Blind. Episode 12 is coming out next week. We'll be doing that with me, Asia Welch, and Mary Krokowski. We're talking about Love Is Blind. Also, over on the Rob Has Podcast Network on the Love at First Sight feed on the podcast, A Perfect Match, like a little Russian doll of titles. But basically, on the Perfect Match podcast, me and Asia Welch are talking about the show Married at First Sight. If that's a show you're into, if you like mess and drama and dating and marriage, that is a show for you. Me and Asia Welch break down every episode of Married at First Sight. We're on season 18 as it's coming out this year. So check me out there as well. And of course, I'll always be here talking Elsbeth, talking The Good Wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a reminder, if you want to support us, free and easy way, ratings, reviews, they all really help. They all really count. But until next week, stay good.